I'm so glad you joined me for today's surprise, Get the Dirt. All summer, as part of this summer's library reading program, we will be getting the dirt on all types of themes. And what a better place to get the dirt than our library. Why? Because the library is full of dirt. Tuesdays, we've been getting the dirt on pets. Wednesdays, we've been getting the dirt on the topic of digging deeper, which is the theme of this summer's library reading program. Thursdays, we've been getting the dirt on musical instruments. And on Friday, we've been getting the dirt on a surprise theme. Today's surprise theme is tall tales. Now first, I got the dirt on animals with the tallest, well, actually longest tails. This is a bird. It's called a male long-tailed window bird. It's from Africa. 20 inches, 4 times the length of its body. It's a pretty big tail. Fish. There's a leopard whip-tailed stingray. Pacific Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. Tail is 3 times the length of its body. 20 feet. 20 feet. That's a lot. That's a big tail. This is a mammal. It's a long-eared jerboa. It's found in China and Mongolia. The tail is 5.9 to 6.4 inches, which is double the length of its body. And the reptile is an Asian grass lizard. Southeast Asia, 10 inches, 3 times the length of its body. I'd say those are pretty long tails. All these animals can be found in the various parts of the library. They could be found in the 000 because the 000s is the place to look for encyclopedias, or a big fat book. Encyclopedias can be also found in the special section called reference. These animals could be found in the 400s because on the 400s shelf, languages about dictionaries and foreign languages can be found. They can be found in the 500s because the 500s is the place to explore science or math or a dinosaur. You see, it depends on where your interesting reading trail on these animals takes you to get the dirt. Encyclopedias are a great place to start when you need to get the dirt. They are arranged in ABC, alphabetical order. Each animal would be found in a volume for the animal on which you want to get the dirt. See, this is the Night Encyclopedia. It's A. So in other words, you would find armadillos in here or something like that. The other numbers, such as the 500s, are great when you are looking for a specific book on the animal which you wish to get the dirt. What? I am talking about tall tails, animals with the tallest or longest tails. What? Oh, you mean this tall tale I wrote. See how tall my tail is? I wonder if I could make it taller. Let me see. How tall is it? Appears to be about 1 foot long. Using this tape measure. This is a rather tall tail. Oh, am I supposed to read all the tall tales about? Well, for what are we waiting? Let's get the dirt on some legendary characters. America has some great... Do you want me to read this? Alright. Every small turtle family with ice cream almost always runs all day, several miles, on land with clouds with both left eyes closed. Now that I satisfied your curiosity, let's get back to getting the dirt. America has some great tall tales, stories about people doing amazing things. But really, you can see how I confuse between a tall tale and a tail, can't you? So all the different animal tales. and there's a tale of Great American Tall Tales. It's easy to confuse. See? You spell tails like an animal, tail, T-A-I-L, or a story, T-A-L-E-S. Or there's T-A-E-L, which is a weight used in China equal to 50 grams. Words that sound the same but are spelled differently are called homophones. In the 428 section of the library has some fun books about homophones. This book is called D.I.R.T. Dear, I now live at the zoo. Wait until you hear what goes on over here. Love, aunt, ant. The moose loves moose. He ate 8 bowls. Have you seen the ewe? She's been in a daze for days. That's him, the horse, who is hoarse from humming a hymn. It's quite a feat when the bat hangs from his feet. The monkey will tell you a tale as he hangs from his tail. T-A-L-E is the story type. T-A-I-L is what monkeys hang from. The doe needed dough because she needed the dough. A doe is also a female deer. The toad was towed to the top of the seesaw so you could see the sea. A whale was allowed to wail aloud. The bear had to pause to bare his big paws. Hey, the elephant threw a pail through the big pile of hay. Have you read about the red fox who blew blue bubbles? The giraffe's long neck helps him choose what he chews. The cows in the herd were in a good mood. I heard them as they mooed in harmony. The bee flew away from the flea with the flu, and the bee can be sure that if he had the flea would flee too. There is no news about the news. They keep to themselves. Aunt, ant. You have some very interesting new neighbors. I have a new neighbor too. Do you know about the hare with no hair? She's an expert on skincare. Love, your dear. A hare is a rabbit. So now that we got the dirt on homophones, and we know what kind of tale we're going to get the dirt on today, let's read about some of those amazing legendary characters. Our first book, Thunder Rose, was written by Geraldine Nolan. She wrote the tale because from the time she was young, she wanted to write an American folklore about the Old West. Thunder Rose is a legendary figure like Paul Bunyan and Pico's Bill. These characters never really existed, but their tales are based on the settling of our country. Paul Bunyan is a tribute to the loggers of Northern America and Canada. Pico's Bill is a tribute to the cowboys of the southwestern United States. Thunder Rose pays tribute to the freed slaves after the Civil War who helped settle the Wild West. Since this book is fiction, It's found under the children's section under NOL for Nolan. Thunder Rose. Rose was the first child born free and easy to Jackson and Millicent McGruder. I recall most vividly the night she came into this world. Hailing rain, flashing lightning, and booming thunder pounded the door, inviting themselves for the blessed event. Taking her first breath of life, the infant did not cry out. Rather, she sat up and looked around. She took hold of that lightning, rolled it into a ball, and set it above her shoulder. While the thunder echoed over the other, they say this just accounted the fact that the child had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins. "She's going to grow up to be good and strong, all right," said Doc Holliday said. The child turned to the good doctor with a thoughtful glance and replied, "I reckon I want to do more than just that, thank you very kindly." Shifting her gaze to the two lovingly lights shining on her, which were her ma and pa, she remarked, "Much obliged to you both for this chance to make my way in the world." Then she announced to no one in particular, "I'm right partial to the name Rose." So much love with this gift of their lives, their ma and pa hovered over in watchful splendor, overcome with love that they lifted up their voices in a song, an old song and a melody so sweet and true, a lullaby passed down from the ages, echoing since the beginning of time. "There is music ringing so sweetly in my ears," the newborn exclaimed. "It's given me a fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me. I'll register it here in the bull's-eye set in the center of my heart, and see what I can do with it one day." Rose snored out plenty that first night, breathing on her own, rattling the rafters of the roof, right along with the booming thunder. There was nothing quiet about her slumber. She seemed determined to be just as forceful as that storm, with the thunder and lightning keeping watch over the rest of the night. Her ma and pa just took to calling her Thunder Rose. The next morning, when the sun was high yellow in that billowy blue sky, Rose woke up hungry as a bear. In spring, but not the least bit ornery. Minding her manners, she politely thanked her ma for the milk, but it was not enough to quench her hungry thirst. Rose preferred instead to drink her milk straight from the cow. Her ma was right grateful to have such a resourceful child. No other newborn had the utter strength to lift a whole cow clear over her head and almost drink it dry. In a moment's time, Rose did, and quite daintily so. She was as pretty as a picture and had the sweetest disposition. But don't let yourself be misled. That child was full of lightning and thunder. Out on that paper bag around dusty, dry, wide-open space, Rose often was found humming a sweet little tune as she did her chores, and true to her word, Rose did more than grow good and strong. The 2-year-old became quite curious about the pile of scrap iron lying next to the barn. Rose took a good-sized piece, stretched it here, bent and twisted it there. She constructed a thunderbolt, as black as pitch, to puncture her name. She called it Coal. Wherever she went, Coal was always by her side. Noticing how skilled Rose was with metal, the pa made sure there was an extra supply of it always around. At the age of 5, Rose did a commendable job of staking the fence without a bit of help. During her 8th and 9th years, Rose assembled some iron beams together with the wood blocks she used to play with, and constructed a building tall enough to scrape the sky, always humming as she worked. By the time she turned 12, Rose had perfected her metal bending practices. She formed delicately shaped alphabet letters to help the young ones learn to read. For his birthday, Rose presented her pa with a branding iron, a circle with a big MAC for Macruder in the middle. Just in time, too, because a herd of quick-tempered longhorn steer was stampeding its way up the Rio Grande. They were plowing a path straight toward her front door. Rose performed an eye-catching wonder, the likes of which was something to see. Running lightning fast toward the herd, using coal for support, Rose vaulted into the air and landed on the back of the biggest lead steer. Like he was a merry-go-round pony. Grabbing a horn in each hand, Rose twisted that varmint to a complete halt. It was just enough to restrain that top bull and the rest of the herd. But I believe that what touched the critter's heart was when Rose began humming her little tune. The cankerous ton of beef was restless no more. He became as playful as a kitten, and even tried to purr. Rose named him Tater on account of his favorite vegetable. Hearing Rose's lullaby put that considerable creature to sleep was the sweetest thing I had witnessed in a long, long time. After the dust had settled, Ma and Pa counted 2,700 head of cattle. After they added up in the 500 they already had, using scrap iron, Rose had to add a new section to the bullpen to hold them all. "What did you do to the wire, Rose?" Ma asked, surprised and pleased at her daughter's latest creation. "Oh, that? While I was staking the fence, passed me to keep little Barbara J. company. That little twisty pattern seemed to make the baby laugh, so I like to think of it as Barbara's wire." "That was right clever of you to be so entertaining to the little one like that," Ma said. Rose blushed. Over the years, the twisty wire caught on. Folks just called it barbed wire. Rose and her pa spent the whole next day sorting the animals that had not been branded. One day soon, before the cold weather gets in, she told her pa, "I'm going to have to take this herd up to the Chisholm Trail to market in Albine. I suspect the Tater is the right kind of horse for the long drive northward." On Rose's first trip to Albine, while right outside of Clodwell, that is inescapable, full of outrage and ire, outlaw Jesse Bain and his gang of desperados tried to rustle that herd away from Rose. Using the spare metal rod she always carried with her, Rose lassoed those hot-tempered hooligans up and good and tight. She dropped them all off to jail, tied up in a nice, neat iron bow. It wasn't any trouble at all, she told Sheriff Weaver. Somebody had to put a stop to their thieving ways. But that wasn't the only thieving going on. The mighty sun was draining the moisture out of every living creature it touched. Even the rocks were crying out. Those clouds stood by and watched it all happen. They weren't even trying to be helpful. Why, the air had suddenly turned so dry and sour that at times seemed to all but stand still. There was not a drop of water in sight. Steer will not move without water, and that was making those bulls mad, real mad. And when a bull gets angry, it's like a disease that's catching, making the rest of the herd mad too. Tater was looking parched and mighty thirsty. "Got to do something about this," Rose declared. Stretching out several iron rods lasso fashion, then launching coal high into the air, Rose hoped she could get the heavens to yield for it. She caught hold of a mass of clods and squeezed them hard, real hard, all the while humming her song. Gentle rain began to fall, but anyone looking could see this was not enough moisture to refresh 2 ants, let alone a herd of wild cows. Suddenly, a rotating column of air came whirling and swirling around, picking up everything in its path, sneaked up on Rose. "Whoa there now, just hold on a minute," Rose called out to the storm. Tater was helpless to do anything about that sort of wind. Those meddlesome clouds caused it. They didn't take kindly for someone telling them what to do, and they were set on creating a riotous rampage all on their own. Oh, this riled Rose so much that she became the only two-legged tempest to walk the western plains. "You don't know who you're fooling with," Rose called out to the storm. Her eyes flashed lightning. She bit down and gnashed her thunder from her teeth. "I don't know why anyone would want to mess with a pretty young woman with the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins, but pity for them, those clouds did." Rose reached for her iron rod, but there was only one piece left. She did not know which way to turn. She knew coal was alone was not enough to do the job. Unarmed against her own growing thirst and the might of the elements, Rose felt weighted down. Then that turning column split, and now there were two. They were coming at her from opposite directions. Rose had some fast thinking to do, never being one to bow down under pressure. She considered options, for she was not sure how this would come out all in the end. Is this the fork in the road of trying to have my final supper? Will this be my first and my last ride of the roundup? She quieted herself in the depths of her heart. Her contemplations brought her a little relief as she witnessed the merciless Castellanic efforts of the windstorm bent on disaster. The winds joined hands and cranked and churned a path heading straight towards her. Calmly, Rose spoke out towards the storm as she stood alone to face the wreck and ruin, multiplying devastation. I could ride at least one of you out to the end of time, but I've got this fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me, and I see what I'm to do with this day, Rose said, smiling. The winds belted at rumbling pitch. Rose squarely faced that storm. Come on and join me, you winds. She opened her arms wide as if to embrace the torrent. She opened her mouth as if she were planning to take a good long drink. But from deep inside of her she heard a melody so real and sweet and true, and when she lifted her heart, she unleashed her song of thunder. It was a sight to see. Rose making thunder and lightning rise and fall to the ground at her command, at the sound of her song. Oh, how her voice rang out so clear, real and true. It rang from the mountaintops, it filled up the valleys, it followed like a healing river of breathing air around her. Those tornadoes, calmed by her song, stopped their churning masses and raged no more, and gentle as a baby's breath, a soft, drenching, and soaking rain fell. And Rose realized that by reaching into her own heart and to bring forth the music that was there, she had even touched the hearts of the clouds. The stories of Rose's amazing ability spread like wildfire far and wide. And sure as thunder, follows lightning and sun follows rain, wherever you see a spark of light flash across the heavy steel, gray sky, listen to the sound of thunder and think of Thunder Rose and her song, that mighty, mighty song, pressing the bull's eye that was set at the center of her heart. So what about the book made this a tall tale? I think I'll use this tape measure to help me measure how tall this tale was. First of all, babies don't really talk, so that is a tall tale. Second of all, I don't think a 2-year-old could bend metal very well. I don't think it's common for 5-year-olds to repair a complete fence. And a 12-year-old definitely can't turn around a herd of steer. People don't generally stop tornadoes. And babies definitely can't roll up lightning and put it on their shoulders. I'd say this tail was at least a foot long. So here is it a foot. Our next book is about Jackrabbit McCabe. This book pays tribute to the era of American history where the telegraph lines were being strung up across America. Jackrabbit McCabe and the electric telegraph. This here is the story of Jackrabbit McCabe, who was born to run. At birth, his legs were so long they looped like a pretzel, and his father had to add an extra wheel to the baby carriage. I'd say that was a tall tale. When he was 3 years old, his mama dressed him in long pants every morning, but by noon his sock tops showed, and by 5 o'clock he was wearing shorts. I don't think people generally grow that fast. Little Jack chased whatever he could run, hogs, dogs, even his own shadow. As he got older, he raced trains flying past his house at Windy Flats. For years, the engineers cheered him on. By the time he turned 18, he beat every stagecoach, antelope, and locomotive in the territory. 18-year-olds can't outrun many things. Perched on the edge of the Great Plains, the town of Windy Flats always counted on Jackrabbit's speed when a message had to get out fast, like to fetch old Doc Dobbins to patch up some ninny from the Double Daria Club who fell while climbing up St. Bertha's Church steeple. Whenever the sky turned green and twisters bore down, Jackrabbit rounded up every wandering chick and child and punked them safe back home. People don't generally race tornadoes. On Sunday afternoons, he ran horse races out on the country fairgrounds. Folks who knew Jackrabbit always bet him to first place. Since he earned a piece of the pot, he made good money. People don't generally outrace horses. Then one day, something new came to Windy Flats, the electric telegraph. Audie's telegraph wires already crisscrossed the landscape, carrying messages quicker than mail by using electricity. Each city and town was connected by the wires, had a telegraph operator who sent and connected the wires, had a telegraph and an operator who sent and received messages in Morse code, an alphabet of dots and dashes. The first week the telegraph company showed up in Windy Flats, there was plenty of talk. I don't believe that newfangled contraption can carry a message faster than Jackrabbit, Mayor babbled. Nor do I, said Judge Feston. The telegraph man overheard their boast and said, how about a race between your fella here and this electric telegraph? Sandy Bluff just got themselves an operator. That's near part 25 miles as the crow flies. Of course, the mayor had no trouble convincing Jackrabbit to race. Why, yes, sir, Jackrabbit said. I can outrun anything. On the day of the big show, folks came from miles around Windy Flats as felt as festive as a flag-waving jubilee. A brass band played and Mayor Babel spoke. When the mayor carefully wrote the same message on 2 slips of paper, he handed one to the telegraph man and the other to Jackrabbit. To start the race, Judge Feston hollered so everyone can hear. On your marks, get set. He fingered hovered just above the telegraph key. Jackrabbit leaned way over with one foot ready in the air. Go! Down with that telegraph key. Off went Jackrabbit McCabe. Jackrabbit pumped his legs, kicking up storms and clouds of dust. On the flat roof of the Mercantile, children whooped and hollered as they watched him roar off like a tornado down the road and out of sight. The crowd held its breath. In a few minutes, a reply came clattering back as the telegraph key jumped and snapped all on its own. The telegraph man quickly read the code and shouted, "Message received. Stop. Sandy Bluff operator." The crowd let its breath in one great sigh. Aw, shucks. Where's Jackrabbit McCabe? They asked each other. Well, sir, Jackrabbit ran in record time, 9.5 minutes to Sandy Bluff. There was no brass band to welcome him, only a telegram tacked up on the door of the depot. It read, as that fine statesman and inventor Benjamin Franklin once said, energy and perseverance conquers all things. Stop. Mayor Babel of Windy Flats. Jackrabbit pulled the mayor's message out of his pocket and read it. The Sandy Bluff telegraph operator. Yep, they're the same. I guess I got beat. Jackrabbit felt lower than a snake's navel. He took a slow stagecoach ride home. Meanwhile, Mayor Babel paced and thought. He was barely listening to the telegraph man talk, till he heard, "Say, who's going to be our telegraph operator?" Suddenly, the mayor perked up. "What about Jackrabbit McCabe? His fingers are half as speedy as his long legs. We're in business." And so, when Jackrabbit finally arrived back in Windy Flats, Mayor Babel was there to greet him. "Good news, my friend. How would you like to become the first telegraph operator in our fair city? Jack Rabbit's shy grin quickly grew into a face-splitting smile. He jumped with a big wahoo and ran 6 times around town. So Jack Rabbit was sent away for a Morse code book, and when it came, he practiced every minute. Before long, his fingers flew like banjo players strumming that telegraph key, day in and day out. He sent and received messages, and of course hand-delivered telegrams in a flash. He even teamed up with the local typesetter, printed the news that came over the wire, linking Windy Flats to the whole entire country. And who do you think delivered the newspaper every morning? That's right, Jack Rabbit, who could run through every speck of town as fast as a squirrel hightails it up a tree, and what's more, land every paper at every door. So, as we measured, we knew that Jack Rabbit was 10 inches, because we measured it throughout the story, because we found around 5 exaggerated parts, and Thunder Rose was a complete foot. Now, this isn't how you usually measure tall tales. This is just a fun way that we did for an example. So, what makes a tall tale a tall tale? Well, a tall tale combines fact and fiction, such as freed slaves helping settling the West, which is a fact, and fiction, a 12-year-old girl holding back a herd of steer. It's full of exaggerated statements, such as Jack Rabbit McCabe outrunning horses, trains, and twisters. Life is tough, such as wrestling cattle from Thunder Rose and things being so dry. Heroes are brave, buff, and brainy. Jack Rabbit and Thunder Rose both showed those characteristics in different ways. Heroes are hard-working and never give up. Well, that sure does describe Thunder Rose with the desperados. So how are legendary figures in tall tales different from historical individuals whose exploits sound an awful lot like a tall tale? Well, characters like Thunder Rose and Jack Rabbit, Paul Bunyan and Pico's Bill, and Buffalo Stormalong and Joe Mag-Ark, and others never existed, but the history of the settling of America did. Historical individuals such as Johnny Appleseed, Casey Jones, Jim Bowie, Calamity Jane, John Henry, Molly Pitcher, Henry Knox, and so many others truly did exist and did amazing things. However, amazing things. Some of their deeds have been greatly exaggerated over the time. Tales like John Henry can be found in the 398 section of the library. Others, like Johnny Appleseed, can be found in the 634 or 921 sections of the library. This book is called Johnny Appleseed. This is a story about Johnny Appleseed. With a name like that, you would think he was make-believe. But Johnny Appleseed was a real person who lived more than 200 years ago. It was a sunny fall day in Massachusetts when a boy named Johnny Chaplin was born. The baby had cheeks as red and round as apples. Johnny's big sister Elizabeth was happy to have a little brother. The children played together with whatever they could find. And the sun shone and the rain fell, and little Johnny played as well. All was well. Johnny's family got bigger. Johnny and his sister were joined by 10 younger stepbrothers and stepsisters. What a busy, noisy house. Johnny would go outdoors when he needed quiet time. Sometimes he'd walk along the river. The squishy mud felt good under his feet. Other times, he would sit under an apple tree and read. Johnny would watch the animals in the wild, the foxes playing in the meadows, the deer dashing through the woods, and the birds soaring high in the wide blue sky. If he found an injured animal, Johnny would care for it until the creature was well. Johnny liked being outside. When he got older, he went to work in the apple orchard, just like his great-great-great-grandfathers, long before him. When the sun shone and the rain fell, and Johnny grew up, and all was well. Johnny learned everything about growing apples. He was happy planting seeds, taking care of the trees, and munching on the delicious fruit. Lots of people were moving west back then. When Johnny was all grown up, he decided to go west too. He didn't bring much with him, For a hat, he used his paw and a burlap sack. Did he find for a shirt? And shoes? Well, why wear shoes when you have two perfectly fine, good feet? Johnny traveled the countryside. The sun kept him warm by day. The stars made a roof over his head at night. The rain washed him clean, and the animals kept him company. Sometimes Johnny would stop and plant apple seeds. As soon as seedlings grow, he'd sell the small plants to families moving west. When they got to where they were going, families planted Johnny's seedlings and grew trees of their own. Johnny was friends with everyone. Wherever he went, he'd bring seedlings, pitch in with chores, and share stories of his adventures. The seasons passed. Every fall, Johnny gathered seeds from ripe apples. Every spring, he planted seeds and passed the seedlings to settlers. He planted so many apple trees that before long, people started calling him Johnny Appleseed. The sun shone and the rain fell, and the trees filled the land, and all was well. Year after year, Johnny tended his orchards, visited friends and family, and slept under the stars. Because of him, people always had fresh fruit to eat. Because of him, the land grew more beautiful. Johnny Appleseed left behind thousands and thousands of apple trees across America. Just think, the next apple you eat may be from an orchard that was first planted by Johnny Appleseed. And the sun shone, and the rain fell, and Johnny's story lives on, and all is well. What about Johnny Appleseed might be an exaggeration? Well, the one that I found in this book is, it said when he was born, his cheeks are as red and as round as apples. People's cheeks usually don't get that red. Or big. To finish out today's Get the Dirt, let's play this game that was in today's surprise kit from the library. There are different variations to this game, but let's start with the simple version. I'll pick 8 pieces from this bag, and you'll help me create our own tall tale. See, here's the bag. And here's some pieces. So I have some pieces. And then you get one of these cards. The one I chose happens to be a farm. So now I have to make up a story with all these pieces on a farm. We need to have a historical happening with a fictional character. So let me see. I have a dragon, a forest, a girl, palm trees, a bed, fire hydrant, skateboard, and an apple. I think it should happen with the girl. So this is going to be her. So it's going to be a historical story, but this is going to be the fictional character. It's going to be full of exaggerated sentences. So we can have giant apples and things like that. The times have to be tough. There's a dragon living in the forest. Our hero is brave, buff, and brainy. She figures out a way to get rid of the dragon. And our hero is hardworking and never gives up. So let's say our hero is the girl, and she's living on a farm. And one day, a little ways from the farm, there's a forest, and on the edge of the forest, there is a big sand hill. There's palm trees and everything. One day, she was skateboarding on her giant skateboard through the forest, and she found a dragon. Now she was very, very scared, because this was a huge dragon. I mean, come on, he's bigger than the forest. And he was keeping their apples. And she couldn't get her apples because the dragon was hiding the apples from her. So she had to come up with a way to get the apples away from the dragon, or to get the dragon out of there. She quickly skateboarded back home, and decided to sleep on the idea. She is sleeping in her bed, counted the pieces. When she woke up the next morning, she had a plan. What she did, so she grabbed a fire hydrant and put it on her skateboard, because she's a very, very strong girl. And then she pushed her giant skateboard towards the woods and hid it behind the sand dune. And then she used the hose and she sprayed the dragon out. So he knocked his head on a piece of bark, or, yes, because dragons have very thin skulls. And he was knocked unconscious. Then she put him on the skateboard, because she again is a very, very strong girl, and she set him adrift in the ocean. Then she was able to carry back their farm's giant apple, and everyone was able to live happily ever after, because the dragon was on a distant island where, again, there's only sand dunes and palm trees. Thanks for joining me for today's Surprise Get the Dirt. Be sure to join us next Friday for another Surprise Get the Dirt. Until then, be sure to get the dirt at your local library.